I mean, I still had the thoughts, the desires of getting high and all that stuff. But I knew at that time I was looking at, okay, jail. I mean, long time, and how long prison sentence. But I knew I was like, that's, and I'm like, well, I didn't have my idea. I didn't have anything, like I lost my kids. Literally, what else, what's a house, if I don't have anything. So, um, but yeah, he just, I just took probably the first 9 months. I didn't talk to anybody. I just stayed off the radar and being God all day long, every day. Reading my word. I was at peace, and then, slept at the beach quite a few nights. They had them concrete tunnels, they put in the ground. Well, they were doing road work there for a long time, and they had 12 of them lined up by the ocean. So I would sleep in there, just like in the nighttime, I'd tuck in there and get out in the morning and talk to God at the beach and, watch the sun come up, and it was, that gave me fulfillment. And I knew I was trusting God. I had to trust God. I trusted God in my kids. I had to trust my situation. I knew I was going to have to face the music eventually, but it was on his time. All the times, like literally all the times that I even read my name at the beach and nothing came up. I knew God had me hidden until the right time. But I kept asking the Lord to take away my desires, take away this, this and that. And wasn't taken away. And I was looking at him taking it away from my own freedom. I wasn't really didn't have nothing to do with him really as much as I wanted to be right standing and everything. But
what's up? What's up? Welcome to another session of Rebuilding Life After Addiction. I'm your co-host, Rob. We got Justin on. We have Herb on. It's going to be a really good show today. I'm so thankful because my mom introduced me to this guy. And I remember when I went to go visit my mom just recently, about a month and a half ago, I was just able to hear his story and his heart and his passion for God's people, but also for those that are coming out of the correctional facility. And so I thought it would be an honor to be able to, have him on and share his story and his perspective of life and what he's been through and how God has kind of, kept him throughout all his troubles and uncertainties. And so without further ado, I'd like to welcome my friend and brother in Christ, Herb Ross. Herb, how you doing today?
I'm blessed, brother.
Awesome.
Appreciate the opportunity here.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to another call, man. It's been a little bit since we went live. It's been like 10 days since we got on here and done our last call. And
Right. People are itching for a live, dude.
I didn't have my mic on again. How do I keep doing that? Anyways, it's been 10 days since we went live, man. I'm excited. And Herb, I read a little bit of your story when you sent over the information, man. And I'm excited to jump into it and hear what the Lord's done in your life. And real quick, before we get into that though, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Valley Custom Homes for recently coming on to sponsor the podcast. I mean, these guys decided to come in and sponsor the show. And so we appreciate you guys. If you're in the Shenandoah Valley, Virginia area, these guys do incredible work. They've been in the business for 30 years and they don't do barely any marketing. Everything's been word of mouth. And you know that reputation is the only thing that keeps a business going for 30 years with only word of mouth marketing. So big shout out and thanks to our friends over at Valley Customs Homes for coming alongside and helping us rebuild lives. They're a builder. We rebuild lives after addiction. So man, it works. But Chris, the guy that runs that company, he's such a stand-up guy. And I'm just grateful. And so wanted to jump in and do that shout out real quick. So man, Herb, why don't you take a moment and just introduce yourself to the audience, and share a little bit of your backstory and we'll roll from there.
Yeah. Well, I'm Herb Ross, and I'm I guess I started the addiction really started with the money and being in a poverty-stricken neighborhood and selling drugs to be able to afford the things that the kids around me had. And my uncle started smoking weed with me when I was 9. And then I started selling it by like 13. Pretty much anything I could, if I had the connections and I had the people that want the need from the people there around me, I would make some money. And then I started doing it myself. But I was in my about 21 is when I really started getting addicted. I cut my Achilles tendon, my tibial nerve, I started getting on the pain pills and needing them every day, so then I started finding other ways to do more than what I was getting prescribed. I had a dirty doctor, was writing me massive amounts of pills, and I had making my own things, anything I could do to feed that addiction. But a lot of it I was running from God, running from pain of my childhood and my mother's pain, a lot of that. But so I ended up with solid cocaine, ended up getting with a hit on my head, looking at when the Attorney General's office finally caught up with me. I had a couple buys, for a few ounces of cocaine here and there. So they came in and looking at 72 years, they stacked them. I had the baby on the way, at the time, and he's 13 now. But so I they wanted me to give up somebody to, kind of work the system, and so I went and so I gave one guy up, which turned around, they pretty much put a hit on my head, $10,000 hit, to take me out, and the Attorney General's office, had an inside man there that actually got wind of it, and so they had to move me out there because they felt responsible. My main fear was pretty much going to jail, fighting that addiction in jail, having to fighting it on my own, leaving my kid stranded, and so I kind of went against everything I believed in at the time. But so we moved to Jacksonville. They paid for us to get a place. I beat on, I didn't have to do any time on that. There was guns and a lot of different things involved. So I felt blessed to get out of that, but I was still had the addiction. Then before you know it, I started, cooking meth and started doing anything I could do to, trading, just trading up for things. And, so we moved into a house that was, just haunted, it kind of took over the ex-wife now, but, was under a spiritual attack. She ended up leaving, taking the kids, moving back to Pennsylvania where I had the hit on my head. So the only way I had to get pretty much was to go back with nothing. Lived in an abandoned house for a while, still doing what I knew how to do, make ends meet. And then moved to the abandoned house, fixed it up, made a home. Didn't have running water, didn't have pipes, heat, anything. So ended up getting the electric turned on. And that's where I started seeking the Lord then. I knew, I've always knew he was there with me as a kid, even though I spent a lot of time alone. I knew he was there with me. I just felt his presence, But I remember I started going this, I would go fill up like 10-gallon jugs of water down at the creek and, go to flush the toilet and everything, and saving a little bit of money. I fixed it up to be a home, trying to get my boys back. Went clean for a little while, trying to, do it for my kids. And then she fought me and beat me in court, took my boys. And then I went back into addiction, I had the police on me. I had, up there, if you miss a $25 payment, they're sending a $50 constable out to collect. And if you don't have it, they're taking you right to jail, But I was in and out all the time, always on the run, always chasing, looking over my shoulder, playing cat and mouse with the police. Let's see, that would have been 2013. So I'm 45 now. So, yeah. So I went up there knowing I had a hit on my head, but knowing it was either that or not see my kids, So I went there, but really where the Lord met me at, where, was, so I went to this bar, where I knew pretty much just reckless. I knew that's where the, people hung out at, and I just didn't care, just at that point. So I came, so I wanted to go leave, and then guys stalled me, and I knew something was up. I seen them on the phones and making, calls and this and that. So I had a bicycle, and I would go down this bike trail. So when I left the bar, I went down this bike trail where he ambushed me. I mean, they had the one side blocked off and the other side blocked. I seen a big light coming out from the back of the truck. Yeah, so I knew they were going to snipe me off. So I took my bike, went up into the woods. Kind of just that's where I prayed. And I told the Lord, I said, if it's my time to go, I was like, be there with my kids. That's really the only thing that really mattered to me. I said, if not, get me out of here. I didn't know how, because I knew they had me. Yeah, I knew they had me blocked off. The only thing to the left of me was a big hillside. There was no going up that, and to the right of me was all woods. And then on the other side of the woods was a river, and it was November. And it was cold. So that's when, and it was dark. And next thing I know, just the Lord just took supernaturally. I mean, I was able to see a deer trail, like just lit up. Went down and like showed me when to run. I mean, it just took over. I knew when to stop and listen, run and stop and listen. And they were listening for me, trying to push me through the woods. So I get to the riverbank. I take my hoodie off, put my phones in my hoodie, and took it to my head because you almost walk across the river. So I got in there real quietly. There was leaves all over the ground, so you could hear somebody started to walk and run or stop. So when I got to the water, got over my chest, I started hyperventilating, from the cold, and then that's when I started freaking out because I didn't know what was happening. Next thing I know, like, angel of the Lord just took my hand, just pulled me across the river, put me up on this rock, and I made up. I made it up on top of the hill, went up top of the hill, and I could see across the river, see all my enemies. They had lights and they were coming through the woods. They had another one at the other end. They were waiting on me. They were going to push me through like a deer. So I went back up around them, and then I went up, instead of going down the trail, I went up on the road, up on the hill, on the top of the hill. And then I was able to get home that way. But the main thing, when I went to church that Sunday, I was like, I knew it was something. Lord kept, that saved me supernaturally for a reason. But I went to church, and then the reverend at the church, he like just started, like, he just threw away his sermon, just staring right through me. He started talking about, like Psalms 18, where he talks about making my feet like a deer and set me on high places. He's my refuge. When I cried out to him, I'm just bawling. And from Sunday to Sunday, it was just me and God. I would just add questions, and I would, next Sunday I go to church, he would just answered all my questions I had all week, through scripture. And then when I met his wife, several months later, she said, she's like, she knew who I was because he told her about how God would speak to him, and he would throw away his word for that week. God would just speak through him. So I felt this, the connection, the duty, to walk in that. I mean, I was still battling in my mind. I still had the addiction, I wasn't free, but I felt the love, I felt the mercy and all the beginning, recipe of, being free. So I started realizing how real his word was. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to know more. So I was still, coping with, the addiction. Ended up, my mother, she went, she was going to pain clinic. She was addicted to at the time, got kicked out of her pain clinic, and then, didn't have no other options but the heroin. So, by that time, I was on heroin still, seeking God though, seeking answers. But so she was, she had suicidal, moments, twice that God brought her back, it wasn't her time. She, so her only option was, she said she was going to jump in front of a train if she didn't find something. She couldn't afford it, buying them on the streets, she couldn't, and she was in a lot of pain, a lot of back issues. So I introduced her to the heroin. I didn't know what else I didn't know what else to do. I didn't want her to, off herself. So, so she had me stopping over 3 times a day. I didn't want her to OD either. So I kept it minimal, just kind of keep her from, being sick and everything. I mean, that ate me up for a long time. One night she had me, told me she wanted more. She was drinking. I said, I'm not giving you any more. I'm not going to kill you. So I ended up going outside into the cold. The transportation, I think it was snowing out, and finally called her back. I said, okay. I went back in, did it. She died. OD. I mean, the Lord brought her back, but I mean, it was cold, like dead. And then, my mother just said, yep. Yeah. Which, that goes way back, my childhood, but this was, it led me into, my next move, so I went and, so the guy that sold the heroin, I already knew, I heard he had cases looking at warrants, drugs, everything else. And so I already had my mind made up. I'm going back to Florida, so I was going to go on the run. Before I did it, I went and paid him a visit. And then, so when, kind of just, the charge was, overnight, B&E during the overnight accommodation, so pretty much a home invasion. But I didn't get all the way inside. I cut myself. I was busting a window out, and, they were home. And so when I cut myself, they left a drop of blood on the curtain. It was a big thing all over on the news and everything else. And then so I left, went and hid up in the mountains for a couple months, at a friend until I could figure out a way to get to Florida. Got to Florida at that time. I just went with the clothes on my back. I was flew to Jacksonville, went homeless, did the homeless scene for about 2 years, lived in a tent. At that time, that's when I totally gave up. I said, all right, Lord, you got your way. I still had the thoughts, the desires of getting high and all that stuff. But I knew at that time I was looking at, okay, jail, long time, and how long prison sentence. But I knew I was like, that's, and I'm like, I didn't have anything, like I lost my kids, literally what else, what's a house, if I don't have anything. So, but yeah, he just, I just took probably the first 9 months. I didn't talk to anybody. I just stayed off the radar, me and God all day long, every day. Reading my word. I was at peace, and then, slept at the beach quite a few nights. They had them concrete tunnels, they put in the ground. Well, they were doing road work there for a long time. And they had 12 of them lined up by the ocean. So I would sleep in there, just like in the nighttime, I'd tuck in there and get out in the morning and talk to God at the beach and, watch the sun come up, and it was, that gave me fulfillment. And I knew I was trusting God. I had to trust God. I trust God in my kids. I had to trust my situation. I knew I was going to have to face the music eventually, but it was on his time. All the times, that I even read my name at the beach and nothing came up. I knew God had me hidden until the right time. But I kept asking the Lord to take away my desires, take away this, this and that. And wasn't taken away. And I was looking at him taking it away from my own freedom. I wasn't really didn't have nothing to do with him really as much as I wanted to be, I wanted to walk, a right standing and everything. But when I asked the Lord to take it away, because I kept holding on to the word, walking, standing and believing the scriptures and taking them and applying them. And, 2 Corinthians 10, 4-6, taking them thoughts captive. But I got tired of taking the thoughts captive, because they just kept coming, and then, bring it to the obedience of Christ. But when I said I had the mind of Christ, and I told the Father, I was like, you didn't. This is in my way of my thoughts, but for Him, because can't think about Him in desires of getting high or going back, cooking meth to get some money to get a hotel room, or all those things were like, my need was, I needed a place. I'd like to have a bed, sleep in, and I know it didn't take much. I could go and do it, but that would mean me going back to cooking and doing all, and going back to using. So, so right then and there, he I just felt this heat and the joy and the peace and crying and laughing. All this came through me all at one time. And I remember looking up. I remember looking up, and there was nobody around that morning. Like every morning I would sit on the beach, joggers would be jogging by or something, but that particular morning there was not a soul. There was a the sunrise came up, and it was just the most beautiful one. I can't even put it in words, but it was like, look at paradise, the way the sun was shining up behind you could see valleys, and you could see just something that you would, like the backdrop of the sun illuminating around the clouds and the trees. I mean, just painted this picture, and like something I'd never seen, I knew it was special. But he burned it out. All the desires didn't have and I even fell short. I found a bag on the ground one time. I was walking, clean. I was clean before this. I found a bag, and I ended up doing it. I don't know why I did it, but I did it. And I felt horrible after that. So after this moment, and I knew I was truly free when I did it again. The enemy tested me again. I found it. Right in the garbage. It felt good. I felt victory. I felt. I knew right then and there, I'm free. The victory felt so good. Yeah. I mean, after all that, it probably total about 20 years of being addicted to something. I did, like that was everything.
How old are you now?
45.
45.
So
you started how long have you been free? How long has it been since all this?
Well, that would have been 2017. I don't have the exact date, but yeah, let's say, 2016, end of 2016 is when I went on the run. Started doing it, really gave it all to God at that time.
I think what's amazing is that, like, and Herb, thank you for sharing what you're sharing, but many people don't make it past their mid-20s in addiction, let alone in their late 30s in addiction. And so all that you've been through, right? You said something that really touched me when you said that you would continuously quote 2 Corinthians 10, 4-6. And you were like, man, I'm tired of continuing to take these thoughts captive. I think that's something that's so impactful, because I can relate to that when I am wrestling with temptation, whether it be sexual temptation, whatever it may be, right? Like the desires of my flesh, often at times I become so tired. I'm like, but then I'm reminded, like, I'm trying to do this thing in my own strength, right? Like I haven't really let go and let God get the glory, right? Because I want this recognition of I've done this thing, but it's like you came to a breaking point and you really let God set you free. Because, as I was hearing you speak, it's almost like a little bit of you wanted to have a part in setting yourself free, but God's like, look, I'm waiting to, like, let me do that for you. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's hard, man, because a lot of people that are listening to this, a lot of people that are viewing our channel, or if they're not and they do get the opportunity to watch this, like, it's okay to be tired, right? Like it's okay, but don't remain that way, right? Like don't settle for the drug, right? Because you said you picked it up once The second time, what did you do? You threw it away, right? And it's like, man, like you got to be sick and tired of being sick and tired. And so, yeah, that's good, man. Um, Justin, did you have something that you wanted to add?
Yeah, no. So I'm curious. So what you said, you had these people chasing you down, they were coming after you, trying to take you out. So after you found your freedom and you began to move forward, like what transpired that they just kind of, after you were laying low for a while, just kind of disappear and forget about it? Or how did that get resolved? I mean, are there still people out there looking for you today? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. The funny thing is so whenever so eventually I had to go back, because I had to face the music. Which I'll get to that in 1 second, because that's God moved mightily there, changed my name. Like actually, whenever when they came and picked me up, so the Lord led me after about 2 years. I went into to like this faith-based residential, called Beaches Rescue Recovery Mission down at Jack's Beach. So I went there. I was already free. I felt the Lord wanted me to go there. So the Lord went there. After about 3 months, there's a bed. They keep there. They go like five hours a day in classes and the Word. And so after about 3 months, the guy that was there stepped down, and then Jimbo asked me if I would take over and lead the classes, and kind of oversee, and help disciple. So I did that for a year, and then a little over a year, and then the police came in. They found out where I was at. They took me in to Duval. Got a gentleman there I was ministering to. We were playing spades, and he really took to me, and he started calling me coach. I don't know, just so I look like a coach. So he started calling me coach. So I was like, I knew I'm going back to going back to PA, or I know I'm probably gonna butt heads with this. There was a big group. I mean, a lot of people knew. So I went in there, and they said, "You look familiar." And anybody asked my name, I said, "Coach." I didn't even my name, my tag was on the thing. Nobody. I mean, it was all God. Nobody put nothing together. Like, not once did I hear anything about my past. Like, God, and I was at peace even going into it. I knew, like, even I was going through the detectors, they check you out before they put you in. I just felt this spirit just, speak, a soft voice, just like, "Don't worry, I got you." I went through there. God moved mightily. I only did 8 months. Went to trial. Yeah, I went to trial. So that's a whole nother testimony. But yeah, I went to trial. They dropped the one charge because at my preliminary hearing, the guy, because I had a mask on when I was there and everything. And so my attorney said, "Well, is the guy that was at your house here today?" And he said, "Yeah." He pointed to me. He said, "Well, how do you know it's him?" So he caught a line right at the beginning. He knew who I was, but he acted like I was just there to rob him, like he was a victim, and all this and that. So fast forward, when it came time, I was waiting to go to trial. But 8 months while I was waiting to go to trial, or to see if they were going to take me to trial, all my other warrants, they piled up. I did time served for all my old warrants. It was just drug related warrants. And then like I went to my last hearing, and they were like, "Yeah, we're going to go to trial." I was like, "All right." I said, "Well, if that's what the Lord wants, that's what I'm going to do." I'm good with that. There was so much fruit in there in that 8 months. I've seen people repenting, and people, being thankful that they got caught, with Bible studies and prayer circles, and so many testimonies. It was so fruitful, and they're like, almost didn't care if I got out. Yeah, for real. Like, it was, loved it. But God moved. He moved the judge I had. She was a head cracker. They moved her out of the office because she had to resign for giving unlawful sentencing.
Sorry. I couldn't help it. You were like, she was a head cracker, and I was like, wait, what's a head cracker? But then I realized what you meant.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. She was giving unlawful sentencing. I mean, like giving double sentencing to people like that. That was my judge. Yeah. So God moved her out of the way, put a new judge in. He was a Christian, had favor. So first, the prosecuting attorneys, they wanted to fight it. They thought they were going to go ahead and go to trial. That day later, I got back to my cell. I got in front of my mother, and she's like, did they tell you yet? You're going home tomorrow. I'm like, what? They just said we were going to trial. I was like, and I guess they changed their mind. So yeah, so I got out the next day. I was looking at 4 to 8 years, but for the charges. So yeah, so got me. I had a little bit of parole to do. I got out. Still don't have a driver's license, or I still had to wait out my time on that. So they moved back with my mother. I had to wait that out. Got married. My wife now, actually met her whenever I was in the ministry, doing the ministry down, at the recovery transition place there, Jack's Beach. We met her. We would get together and do different, stay community, stay surrounded by the body and different, home churches, different churches and stuff, and just got, surrounded myself around all the people, and that are, God put people in my life when I was homeless. He made me somebody's assignment, would pick me up every morning. He'd pick me up, the more I look back, the more I've seen God's hand in way more than what I thought, going through it, but even all the way back, and I realized he was using everything I went through so I could once I knew him, I would get understanding of my calling, because sometimes you got to go through things, to have the compassion at the depth and for, to reach those that are going through it, so a lot of people going through stuff, they don't want to, if you haven't been through it too, a lot of them, they don't want to hear you all the way, sometimes. Wow. So I look back when I can say,
sorry, no, but you said God made somebody their assignment, and then you said, this is so key, right? Like, this is the beauty of God's hand on our lives, right? He doesn't not use our mistakes, right? He uses them because God is a God of wonders. God is a God that desires to show out and show up, right? And it's like Joseph's situation, right? We can look at Joseph's story and see all that Joseph has been through, but yet at the end of the book of Genesis, it says what the enemy meant for evil, God intended for good. And we're so caught up in the moment, looking at our circumstances and situations, but we have to be like Peter and bold enough to step outside of the boat, right? We have to walk on water. We have to do things that are often at times difficult and challenging. And it's good that you say this, Herb, because like, even in my own personal story, like looking at my addiction and the things that I've been through, still not knowing my dad today, but like what I had to go through to be reconciled to my mother or to meet my wife, right? Like if I never went through what I went through, if my wife never went through what she went through, I would have never met her, right? Like everything happened at its perfect timing. And so like we can't underestimate, or we can't undermine God's timing. And I think we do that too often at times.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned earlier, because Rob brought this up as well, about the desires and praying for that to go away. So now it's been like 6 years, right? 6 years since you touched. So where do you live now mentally, right? With the desires, like that prayer, right? That you prayed and you asked God, like, I need this to go, like, where do you live at now? Is it still something that from time to time, an errant thought comes across and you wrestle with it, or have you experienced like that total deliverance mentally?
Total deliverance. Now I'm on fire just to help. I know it's like the Lord gave me the keys, to work, to open the doors. And I want to help others, and that's my, cause I know the pain, that it causes family and loved ones and, yourself, but, one person's motivation might be different than another one's motivation, but God's word is for everybody. There's a Bible story or anything in there somewhere that you can relate to, but my mindset is just, it came to mind. I used to have to nope, that's not, I discerning what the enemy, what's, discernment, but I would find a scripture that worked, and I would remind myself of that scripture, the battle, whatever it was that was coming, that the enemy was going to try to use. Because I realized, not only did I have a physical enemy, I knew I had a spiritual enemy, and so I always had that constant reminder too, knowing, hey, if I step out of this with God, I got a target on my back. As long as I stay in the shadow of his hands, I'm not gonna. I knew he wasn't gonna let nothing kill me, but we're gonna have consequences or decisions, and I knew mine were crucial. If so that was part of my motivation, but I knew my kids, I knew God would take care of my kids more than I could ever take care of them. So I gave him that, and with that trust and knowing while you work on me, I'll trust you with my kids, and everything else will work its way out. Be willing to go through whatever I had to go through. I knew whatever it was, he was driving. He took the wheel. Whatever I had to go through, I was going to, get what I could get out of it, and be used, be available, to be used, whenever and wherever. And
yeah, I think that path to deliverance, man, is so this has come up so many times, Rob, as we've been talking about, when people get free and stay free, right? And you see that very strong thread of purpose that constantly becomes a part of their lives. It's it's the fullness of the gospel. I'm not just coming to the gospel for what I can get. I'm not just coming so Jesus can save me from the mess that I've created. But when he does save me, then I'm submitting to his lordship, right? And that's what you did. It's Lord, my life, it's yours now, right? I did this thing my way, and I'm making that leap. What do they say? It's 18 inches is the distance between a lot of people. It's from the head to the heart. And so a lot of times, I feel it's it's okay to come to Christ as an addict. Save me from this. It's okay to cry out to him in that mess. But the question then becomes, what are you going to do with the freedom? Right? What are you going to do with the deliverance? And you've mentioned that, even before all your stuff was resolved, in a recovery program, serving, finding a way to serve. And it really is no sacrifice at that point for us. Of course there's sacrifice, and of course there's some hard times ministering, but when our lives have been given back to us, this is no sacrifice, because I'm living in the overflow. You're living in the overflow of God sparing you from what was certain death had the past kept moving the way it was moving. And I just think that's so key, man. Purpose, really getting that. Rob was on the call with me with Aaron a couple weeks ago, and he said every time that he goes and preaches somewhere, purpose-driven sobriety. Find something for the sake of the kingdom and go after it. Not everybody's going to get behind a pulpit, and that's fine. But find kingdom work. Find out where the Lord wants you to submit your life to him, and just go with all abandon, with all recklessness. The dude, I'll stop preaching here in just a second. Sorry, guys. But the dude from Project Hope posted the other day on his Facebook wall, Michael Vecchio. He said, I'd never left my dope man's house empty-handed. Never. He said, if I had money, I would go and I would pursue and I would be persistent to get it. But yet so many of us go into the church, we go into the recovery meetings, we show up at programs like Teen Challenge or any of the others, and we leave not getting what we came there for. And it's like, man, I am so hungry for the Lord. And that's what I hear. I hear this fire in you, Herb. I am so hungry for the Lord. Wherever you say go, I'm going to go. Whatever you say do, I'm going to do, because I want the life that's been promised to me in the Bible. What I read, I want to experience that and stop playing. I don't even want the desires anymore. Lord, give me all of your freedom and everything that you have for me. And sorry, that's been bottling up for the last 30 minutes, man, after hearing your story. But it's so inspiring, dude. What you've walked through, I know there was a lot of pain, but to see you repurposing that and using it for the kingdom, that's what the Bible's all about. Right? That's what this whole gospel salvation story, it's what it's all about. It's we're saved for a purpose, and then we go rescue more people out of the fire. And it really is a beautiful thing, man. I didn't really have a question there. That was like a 3-minute rant. I'm sorry.
I think, man, that's really good, Justin, but not a but. That's really good. What I wanted to add to that, or to ask for those that are listening, right? They hear this story and it's man, this is amazing. That's great. It's cool. But how did you find hope amidst, because you were saying throughout your story that you would pray and you would ask God to help you, and, you go on your stints and you binge or whatever. But how did you keep hope? right? Like, I think there's some people that are going through this journey, right? And they're like, what would you say to the individual that is where you're at or where you were at 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, that is struggling and wrestling with the thoughts and the desires, knowing that God has a plan and a purpose, but lack the hope to push forward?
Yeah, that's really good. That's a good question.
Yeah, so I would say, I mean, sometimes you got to get hopeless, really put your faith in, in something else. And that's God. That's the only thing. When you put your hope in God, you can read His Word, and anything that applies to your situation, you can stand on that firmly and believe it, and know that, okay, this is what God says. He's not a man that he shall lie. And that's your hope. I mean, you believe, and God's not going to let you down. God's not going to let his word not be true in your life. It might not look the way you want it to look, but that's where my hope is at. I knew that I knew I had a long season. Coming out of that season, I knew my next season was going to be in prison. I just, but I still had hope. I was like, wherever, if that's my, God, I figured God was the beginning and God's in the end. He knows everything in between. He already knows how, my walk ends, and He still called me, and so I'm just going to walk that out the best I can, staying on His word. His word is what gave me hope. I knew, several other times, that He saved me, guns jammed in my face, and, pulled the trigger and they jammed several times. I should have been dead. I knew, looking back, that He saved me as many times as He did. And He's not going to, the enemy can come at me all he wants, but he's gonna have to get through the Father. So that's where I found hope. But so
it's that confidence too, that right, like
if
anybody with a story similar to yours anywhere on the planet has done this or has gotten free before, or then they can do it too, right? That's that mindset where like did you ever struggle with that? Like the victim mentality, like, man, this just isn't going to work for me. There's no way I'm going to be able to beat this. Like, I'm going to stay trapped here forever, and I feel like a lot of people miss out on hope because they're stuck there,
I read Deuteronomy 8 as, that was huge for me. Like when I started reading about Egypt, and I started reading about how the Israelites went, how God brought them through the wilderness and delivered them from Egypt. And the profound thing He said was, when I multiply, He's humbled them to discipline them as a child, as His son, but also to humble them because when He gives them everything else, it multiplies their gold and their cattle and gives them the promises, that they don't forget Him or think that they did it on their own, so I knew God's problem. I knew God had, rivers of water and milk and honey, and I knew all that was coming. I knew because He said it was. I knew I was just, I was in my Egypt, I was in my slavery of mindset or the drugs, and that was my Egypt. So I knew where I was at, scripturally, going through. But I took the things of history and what they went through and what God spoke, and I knew it was for me too. So, but yeah, everybody has an Egypt, for Christ. Everybody might, everybody's got an Egypt, so yeah, it's
Yeah, it's cool, man. It's amazing to know, right? Because I'll be very careful of how I share my words now. Because my mom, if she ever listens to this, she might catch me by my throat. But no, it's really cool just to know like what your vision is, because that's my mom's vision, to open up a transition home for people. And I know that you guys have talked about that kind of stuff, and so I'm pretty sure that you guys have already spoke about getting connected and her helping out, along with my dad, my stepdad, Ralph. And so, but yeah, man, it's amazing. Herb Ross, dude, 45 years old, 6 years of sobriety, reconciliation with your kids. You have an amazing job. Now you're giving back to people that were once in your position and to be able to testify about the goodness of God in your life. And so, what greater way to bring hope to a lost person, to a broken people? Because no story is ever without purpose, right? Like your story has immense purpose, and so it's amazing to know you, to be a brother in Christ with you, and to who knows, man. This is for my Florida listeners. I might be back in Florida. I might be working with Herb in the near future. I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, Herb, man, I really appreciate you jumping on tonight, man, and on just being open and honest and sharing the deep parts of your story. And it's a big deal because people are going to come across this, and and they're going to need hope. This is going to go up on YouTube and Rumble, and we'll chop it up, and it'll go all over the internet in the next couple of days and weeks and months, and it'll continue to
You'll be
impact
famous,
people.
dude.
Yeah, so we can make you Insta famous TikToker. Yeah, but man, I'm so excited to hear about your recovery ministry that you're getting going and your transitional home that you're rolling out. I was scrolling through the internet the other day, man, and I saw that as of 2020, I think the number was 32 million people in the country are addicted to something. And those are 2020 numbers. So that's before all the pandemic madness. So you can only imagine what that number looks like now. And so it just man, reinforces, the need to do things like you're doing, do things like, Rob and I are going in hard on this podcast right now, just trying to inspire some hope for people to change. Cause addiction is no joke. And with the fentanyl and everything that's else out there, we're just hearing stories, of people not making it through. And it's heartbreaking. Folks are relapsing and overdosing and not getting another shot. And so we're trying to do everything we can to just inspire hope. And when I hear about folks like you, I met a guy in Harrisburg the other night that's getting ready to launch a recovery center down there. And it's just like, man, cheering people on as much as we can, because man, this is a significant problem. And it's, 15, 20 years ago when I was first coming out, it wasn't really in the church as much. It was hidden, but now it's just impacted every corner of the country. And so I encourage you. Thank you for turning your pain into purpose, and being willing to answer the call of God. And that's a big deal. And on that note, I also want to thank our sponsor of this show one more time, Valley Custom Homes, that came on to help us out and bless the show. Thank you guys for pouring into folks that are struggling, and helping to rebuild their lives. You guys can find them on the internet, and I will link all of their stuff down in the description and the comments. But we appreciate you guys for sponsoring the show. And Rob, did you have any parting words?
Yeah, I actually do. I'm pretty emotional, and it's weird, but it's not strange. Heard it's still sticking with me. Somebody was called by God to make you their assignment. And so I want to challenge my viewers and the listeners today to listen to God, because somebody's your assignment. There are people that you walk by that aren't doing good. We have our own agenda, and we don't want to be slowed down. We don't want to miss our destination. But yet sometimes it's slowing down and being 5, maybe 10 minutes late because you took the time to help somebody that was broken. And I just want to challenge you. We just recently lost a sister from TC alumni, and she left 2 girls behind. And that's hard. That's hard, right? Because from my perspective, everything was okay, but it wasn't. And so my heart goes out for her and her family. And so I just want you guys just to understand why Justin and I are doing this. We're not doing this because we want to be YouTube or Facebook or social media famous, but we're doing this because, one, we love one another. We want to give hope back to people, but we also want to let people understand the importance of community, and that you don't have to be alone, and that if you need help, you can reach out. And we want to be of service to you guys, and just to pour into you guys, and just to remind you that as Herb said, you have value, and the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy what has value. And so, yeah, I love you guys. Thank you so much once again for supporting this page. Continue to like, continue to share, continue to just encourage one another as we post things. And yeah, thank you. Thank you.
All right. Yeah.
Love you, man.